that is the fifth trumpet of Revelation. Now, if that's literal, it does nothing for me. The idea is that there's a bottomless pit literally somewhere. Someone's going to open it, and these crazy little creatures, insects with men's faces, women's hair, lions' teeth, scorpions' tails, are going to fly out and sting people on this planet who haven't got the seal of God in their foreheads for 5 months. And it's going to be led by a king of these locust men scorpions who is going to bring them up by unlocking the bottomless pit. So, let me now reinterpret this.
Up through the soles of my feet into my lungs you go, meditation of an ancient kind, exhaling through.
Hey guys, I was just replying to a comment about my Mark of the Beast video where I explained the numerological code used by the Hebrews and the Greeks and beyond there, the Sumerians, which depicts the lower nature of a human being, so the place where that which you would call the beast can express itself, and the higher nature of a human being, that place where the Christ can express itself, are represented using numerology inside the Bible and using the same number but with a polarity. Now, when I replied to that, I saw a lot of people who take Revelation literal, and I couldn't get my head around it, because if I came to you with Greek mythology and I said that there was a man who had a bull for a head, or there was this woman once a few thousand years ago who had snakes for hair, or that these things were going to happen, as this is the revelation of the coming truth of the future of the planet in Revelation, the supposed apocalypse, which it's not that at all, then you would say that I'm crazy. But people take this literal because they haven't been fed the concept that it's partially mythology, and that's what Revelation is, the most mystic book inside the Bible. There's a persistent reference in there to the anatomy of prayer. And the whole idea of it is that it gives you a coded language to show you how you can self-improve yourself to serve God. It also teaches you of the anatomy of prayer. That's why I'll do videos on this, and I'm going to do them soon, on the 7 churches, the 7 seals I've mentioned before, the 7 trumpet calls, 7 angels, so on and so forth. And if you take it literal, it just makes no sense. Now, let me just take a passage, and I want to give you the literal, and then I want to give you the mystical, and tell me which one benefits us today as a human being. Which one makes more sense? So, the passage is of the 5th trumpet and the 5th angel of Revelation. Now, I'll just read that directly to you, and then I'll convert it into the mystic interpretation and see how that feels with regards to our inner workings. Now, it doesn't take away from one or the other, but you have to understand that there are more layers to the Bible than one. And clearly, Revelation is not meant to be taken literally. And this is why I've chosen this one, because I said earlier to someone, do you honestly think Revelation's literal, that you've got locusts with human faces and scorpions' tails and lions' teeth? This is ridiculous. To say that that will literally happen is so ridiculous. It's crazy. We know this stuff does not happen. So what is it talking about, and what is this little creature? So let me first read the full passage so you know what I'm getting at. And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. And to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, nor any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but they should be tormented 5 months, and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were of the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions, and they had breastplates as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running into battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 more hereafter. That is the 5th trumpet of Revelation. Now, if that's literal, it does nothing for me. The idea is that there's a bottomless pit literally somewhere. Someone's going to open it, and these crazy little creatures, insects with men's faces, women's hair, lions' teeth, scorpions' tails, are going to fly out and sting people on this planet who haven't got the seal of God in their foreheads for 5 months. And it's going to be led by a king of these locust men scorpions who is going to bring them up by unlocking the bottomless pit. So, let me now reinterpret this, okay? Now, first and foremost, 5 quite often depicts 5 senses, and they've done it. The writers of Revelation have purposely chosen this to be the 5th trumpet. Bottomless pit. Start here. Bottomless pit. Desire mind that is never ever satisfied. The bottomless pit, if you want to see your bottomless pit, go look at your bank statement or your Amazon account at all the useless stuff you've bought over the years that didn't do anything for you. That's your bottomless pit of desire. That everything you desire is going to make you whole, and it won't. So, the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven to the earth, and he opened the key to the bottomless pit, and arose smoke out of the pit. The bottomless pit is the endless pit of human desire. Smoke, in mysticism, represents ignorance and illusion and the obscurance of truth, or if it's a positive sense, then it's the divine truth of fire, but we always have the polarity. But in this instance, it represents ignorance and the illusion which turns a person away from truth. You then move on, and it goes on to say that the smoke of a great furnace and son of the air were darkened by the reason of the smoke of the pit. The air is the mental plane between heaven and earth, and the air equates to the movement between your animal desires. So the sun represents the higher self. So in ignorance and illusion, the smoke has obscured us from our mental plane between heaven and earth, and also from our higher self, the sun. We've been obscured by the smoke rising out of our bottomless pit of desires. We've obscured it with the ignorance that comes from the illusion that obscures the truth of reality around us. Open up that pit of bottomless pit of desire which dwells in the carnal mind or the ego, and out comes that smoke, which is the illusion and the ignorance within us. And in turn, that then blocks out our higher mind and our plane of the mental functioning of the control of the animal desires. Then you move on, and the locusts appear. And the locusts, at that point, you have to understand, represent the locust in mysticism. It's a traceable language. You can't argue with the fact this language existed with the Hebrews when they wrote this. So they were using it. And the fact that the stories always add up to the same mental governance shows you that they used it as well. So the locust represents the development of the mind and of the moral nature. So out of here starts the development. Your lower desires open, the ignorance comes out of there, you block your higher mind with the smoke coming out of the lower desires, the ignorance coming out of the lower desires. Sorry, someone came to the door. So, you go into your desires, your lower mind, and from the lower mind rises your ignorance, which is represented with the smoke, and that smoke clouds your higher mind and your mental functions between the heaven and earth realm, which is your governance over your animal desires, which represents that smoke blocking out the air and the sun. At which point the locusts come, and the locusts represent, as I said, the development of the mind and the moral nature. So they have a sting like a scorpion, and the scorpion represents the lower emotional nature and the emotions activating with contact with matter, which means that you don't govern your emotions with spirit and you allow the material world to govern it, as we see all over the planet. That's why there's a huge pornography industry, for example, because people allow their emotions, their desires to be stimulated by the matter in front of them. And the same with alcohol, or the same with anything where you're losing your temper, with physical events going around you, a traffic jam, so on and so forth. So scorpions represent the emotions activating via contact with matter. Now, they are given instructions at that point that they should not hurt the grass of the earth. The grass is the awakening of the divine mind in the soul. And thus, they are told not to harm any green living thing. And green represents the astral realm of growth through desire. So these locusts, who represent the development of the mind, are told, don't you harm the awakening of the divine mind in the soul. Only harm those people who don't have the mark of the seal, the word of God written in their foreheads. If you activate your higher mind, whether you believe it or not, you raise up to this pineal gland. That's what you do. The third eye is not demonic. That is from uneducated buffoons. And I won't take any other reason from it, because you can just trace it through history. It's buffoonery to say that this is demonic. The most important, the very cap of the temple of your body is not demonic. I have seen God face to face. Call that place pineal. Listen to Jacob. That's where you see it. And unless you live righteously, you can't raise the chrism in you to activate your pineal. And thus you will have constantly the mark of the beast, because this will be shut off and your hands will always be directed by the lower desires. This here, in this, the persons who are avoided are those who are awakened to God and to Christ and who have risen their secretion, because they have lived righteously. And by knowing that that is active, you know that they have lived a good life. You know they've had temperance. They haven't been gluttons, drunkards, sexually immoral. They haven't had bad words with their neighbours. They have done all that is in line with what Jesus asked, and they have risen and activated their pineal. That's how you do it. That is simply how it works. So, only those men which do not have the seal in their foreheads, and to them he shall not kill them, but those who don't have the seal will be tormented 5 months. This is the representation of the 5 senses being the tormentor. Because as I've said before, your 5 senses happen without you, but as the 5 senses come in, if your mind takes ownership over that input, then it'll start acting on wanting certain sensual pleasures, etc. And that's where the torment begins within you. That's where desire starts, that's where suffering starts, that's where the flesh takes hold, as a Christian would say. So, in come these locusts, and they are the development of mind and moral nature. And they are told only to attack those who have not developed themselves morally and mentally, because those with the seal have not activated their pineal. And only those who are moral and righteous activate it. And even if you think, I haven't activated my pineal, but I fast and I serve others, you've activated it. I assure you, you've activated it. You just don't know because you don't understand what it is. So, those persons are to be tormented, because within the 5 senses, the 5 months, they need to be tormented until they develop. And that's why the locust is there, to the development of the mind, of the moral nature. So we go on, and the locusts then have this bizarre... I've had to take notes to do this one. I don't know it off the top of my head. But I'll reference the only book, one book I used for this is Gaskell's Dictionary of Myth and Scripture, and some of my own knowledge as well from there. For instance, Bottomless Pit, etc. is pretty obvious. And next is, it describes the shapes of the locust, and it says that the locusts were likened unto horses prepared for battle, and the horse is the intellect and the intelligence. So the locust needs to develop your higher mind. Remember that. It has to develop your higher mind. Now, at the same time as having to develop your higher mind, it also has the sting of the scorpion, which is the development of overcoming your emotions interacting with matter. The locusts wear a crown, and the crown is a symbol of supremacy over the lower nature. And they wear iron breastplate, which is a symbol of the mental power that governs the righteous. And their leader is Abaddon in Hebrew, and Abaddon means to perish. So let's just get that completely straight. Let's just get it completely straight what the fifth trumpet has just told you. It's either told you that there are some really creepy insects coming to sting people all over the planet, which is ridiculous and doesn't bear any significance to our lives today whatsoever. It's not a literal doctrine. It's not a literal book. And if you teach it as literal, you're teaching false doctrine. It's as simple as that. You're teaching false doctrine if you expect people to believe that's literal. I was once asked to read at a church in Tanzania, and they asked me to read from Revelation, and I refused because they wanted to preach it as literal, and that I needed to be able to tell everyone, this is nonsense, this is not real. This is symbology to convey deeper, important truth that can change your life and those around you today. So, the story goes then, as you've seen. Let me put the original story on the screen, or maybe I've left it on all the way through. You delve into, okay, well, who opens the bottomless pit? You begin to perish as Abaddon appears and opens up your desires. As soon as you open up the bottomless pit of human desire, you start to perish. That's the etymology, the origin of the word Abaddon. As you go into your lower desires, out of there comes the obscurance of truth with the illusion, which is represented by the smoke inside the fifth trumpet. The smoke then blanks and fills the air and blocks out the sun. The air is the mental plane between heaven and earth, and it's your governance over your animal desires. The sun is also blocked out, the higher self. You've opened up the bottomless pit of your desires, your ignorance has risen, and your higher self is no longer present as it's been diluted with the illusion of the desires of the flesh, and thus the higher self is now gone as well. And out of the bottomless pit of desire comes a saving grace in the form of the locust, because the locust is the development of the mind and the moral nature. And once you go far enough into the bottomless pit, which can be deemed theistic Satanism, once you've realized that desire is a dead end, then born out of the need for lustful desires and fleshly desires can be the seed of enlightenment. And the locust is the seed of enlightenment. The development of the mind and the moral nature is born out of the bottomless pit of human desire. The scorpion, the lower emotional nature, which is your emotions activating in contact with matter, is part of that development as well, because unless you can stop reacting with your emotions to matter, then you won't be able to overcome the scorpion aspect either. And the locust, who is the front side of that creature, won't be able to develop you mentally and morally as it needs to when it is born out of the wasted desires that we can never fulfill. When the presence of healing is born out of the wasted desires of the human ego, then it's a profound healing indeed, because it knows this is a dead end. I'm giving birth to something that can change you. Now, then they go to eat the grass. They're told not to eat the grass, and the grass is the awakening of the divine mind and the soul. So it says, okay, we need to develop them, but don't touch the awakening of the divine mind. Let that keep enveloping and growing within. Don't damage that. That'll grow on its own. And the green is the realm of growth through desire. So it says don't touch that either, because as we know, the locust is allowing us to have mental growth and moral growth off the back of us opening the bottomless pit of desire by learning through error that the fleshly desires lead to pain and suffering and not to the life that Christ promised everybody. They then have a horse's body, which is the intellect and the intelligence, which of course, once you start to improve yourself morally and mentally, your intellect and intelligence needs to be dominated. And you need to dominate that so as you don't react emotionally to the matter around you. So they all tie in together. This is very base level psychology and meditation. It's easy to learn, and there's nothing wrong with meditating as a Christian. It can help you to develop and to be a better Christian. The crown then symbolizes the supremacy over the lower nature. So this beautiful, actually, little being, this locust that is born out of you opening up your realm of desire in meditation, comes rising up with his crown because he has supremacy over that energy which has been sending you down into that bottomless pit of desire. And that is shown because those persons who do not have the seal, which mean those persons who have not lived righteously, those persons who have not overcome their lower nature, those persons who have not fled Egypt, which is another representation of the lower nature in Hebrew mysticism, those persons who haven't done those things, they will be tormented in their five senses by those locusts. And they will be tormented and tormented because the development of the moral mind will make them suffer in sin and regret and guilt for the fleshly lives that they live because they embrace the beast and they don't embrace the Christ. And no matter who you are, if you embrace the Christ, you activate your pineal. It happens to everybody, and people are doing it. It's only the misinformation that people say you go off into another realm that makes people think, well, I've never activated mine and I'm a Christian. If you're dreaming, it's working. If you have love in your heart and spiritual intuition and empathy for others, it's working. It's really quite simple. It's really that simple. That's what it does for you. You can amplify your use of it as you can amplify the use of your arms, of course, but this takes exercises and practice like it does to use any part of your body, including your mind, etc., or your speech, whatever it might be. But it's part of you, and it's an important part of you. It's like the barometer of your goodness, the barometer of your righteousness. Will it reach the top this month, or did I mess up? And many people will mess up and it won't reach the top, but you can try again. Because the tree of life provides fruit every month, and those fruits are that sacred secretion, the chrism, which anoints your pineal gland and activates it. So, the journey is not one of locusts with human faces flying out of a random hole in the floor. The journey is one of the birth of the want for change in your soul and your spirit that comes out of going too deep into the bottomless pit of human desire, and your higher mind is clouded by the smoke or the ignorance that rises up out of there. And then thankfully, God sends those beautiful locusts that represent the development of your higher mind and your higher morals out into the world, and it looks around and sees those that don't need developing, those who have God's seal here, and it looks at those who need developing, and those who need developing are those who are embedded in their five senses, and thus they must be tormented for 5 months to represent. They must be tormented until the five senses are pulled down, and that torment comes in the form of guilt, and comes in the form of regret, and comes in the form of pain and agony for the mistakes you've done whilst living from the flesh. And once you've had that go on, then you have to find discipline so as you don't emotionally react to the matter around you whilst serving God, which is the scorpion's tail. You don't touch the green, you don't touch the higher plane of mental development inside a person that is born out of desire. It's all a story of an inner journey of enlightenment towards the purity and the perfection that Christ wanted for you. If Christ was perfect, then he said you can do greater works than he, then you can try to attain that perfection too. I'm not saying that anyone can, but you should try. And these stories are not literal. They are telling you how to attain it mentally, physically, and spiritually. They show you the journey you must go on and the rubbish you must purge from yourself. And it's that straightforward. A bottomless pit is inside every human being. But so are the locusts that can give birth to the development of the morals and the higher mind. So give birth to them. Don't spend too much time in that pit. Allow yourself to perish and open the pit. Allow the king of the locusts, Abaddon, to open up the bottomless pit. The perishing of yourself, allow it to open. And let them come and heal you. Let them come and heal you. Even if they have to torment you. As it was for I. Way back when I first started doing my fast and I did my first 28-day fast, I was tormented by the locusts. The guilt, the regret, the mistakes, the repentance. But then the joy started to come. Because I started to enter my higher mind. Because I started to enter my higher mind, I fasted again. 40 days. Once I'd done that, that's when God gifted me this. And said, this is your journey. This is, I know, the only spiritual practice that will work for you. Understand that my children need the literal, and I do understand that. But also understand that you need to preach the song in your heart. To allow people who are like you, who are like me, to find the strength within them to come and do what I did. And that's all it's about. And it doesn't require great strength. It just requires great silence. And in great silence you can decipher things. For your carnal mind is silent and your carnal mind is not subject to the laws of God. And thus, I present to you the fifth trumpet of Revelation and its full workings, and how much more important it is as a mystical text than a literal text. It means nothing literally to anybody, but mystically can tell you how to save yourself from the sin that torments most of humanity. And by sin, I mean the actions that force us into our lower nature, and those things that draw us away from the present moment, which lead us to death, because in the present moment is where we feel most vibrant and most alive. God bless, guys. Bye. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, as it really helps us to grow the channel and with it help more children here in Tanzania. Also, don't forget you can support our work by sharing with children in crisis here, be it sharing for a particular need or even sharing one-on-one support for education, housing, food and medical care. It can be done for as little as the cost of a cup of coffee a week back in the West after all. Just visit www.sharetanzania.co.uk to find out more. Lastly, remember you can also support us via Patreon, www.patreon.com/featherstail, and help keep us here in Tanzania to continue our work. The links for the website and for the Patreon are in the description box of this video. Love and light, guys. See you soon.